Let me introduce you to the Hawg, the newest member of my plane family. This is going to become a scrub plane. This is a cheap no-name. It's my friend Lynn Dowd from Dowd's Vintage and Antique Tools. Or is it Dowd's Antique and Vintage Tools? I think Vintage comes first. Well, never mind. You can look it up. He sent me this as a plane to turn into a scrub plane. He calls it a cheap homeowner's hardware store thing. It says made in USA on it. I can't quite make out there's a maker's mark there, I think, maybe, and then a number 2. This compares in size to this Bailey transitional plane, which I use a lot for beginning my joints. I really like this plane, by the way, but not for scrubbing or for any kind of smoothing or anything like that. Transitional planes have that really narrow throat, and it just doesn't really do the trick when it comes to big stuff. At any rate, we're going to turn this into a scrub plane. I call this the Hawg because I'm using well, what I did was I used to use my power tools to dimension up, big chunks of lumber, and I got tired of doing that. And you'll see why in a little bit. I never can get it to where I like it, so I'm just going to start using a scrub plane to do my dimensioning, especially with this oak. And I needed something with some heft, and this thing is kind of heavy. It's got some real iron and steel in it. Maybe no steel. It could be. And to really hog off oak is really what I'm trying to do. And I'll show you the project some other time. In fact, when I test these things out, I'll show you what piece I'm talking about, and we'll bring some pieces off of it. Not a bad little thing, but it's not going to be any good as a smoothing plane or anything like that. So there, we're gonna turn that into something. We'll have fun. The first thing I did was clean it up. A little 3-in-1 oil, machine oil, and a wire brush, and it cleaned right up all this rust from ages of disuse. Now it's time to watch Paul Sellers. Paul Sellers has an excellent video describing in detail, step by step, how to convert your smoothing plane, he uses a Stanley, into a scrub plane.
This one I've got at 7 1/8, which is the radius that I find works.
While we're watching this, let me tell you, when the plane came in the mail, my wife saw my face fall. And she says, "What's the matter?" And I says, "Well, a few years ago I dropped my bench grinder, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this conversion project of turning this bench plane into a scrub plane." And she says, "Well, you just get yourself down to the hardware store and you buy the best bench grinder money can buy." And if you believe that story, I have a very nice toll bridge here in Tonawanda, and I'm looking to unload it. If you're interested, give me a buzz. Pays good money. We're making an arc, especially grinding off those corners of the iron. Taking a look at it, I don't believe this thing was ever used. I mean, it certainly was never sharpened. Look at that. I think this thing sat on somebody's shelf after it came out of the box. Now it's time to make a bevel. I really do like this Delta bench grinder. I think it's the 13167. I forget exactly its number. I think I should do a review of it because it's pretty good. It's got a couple of quirky things about it, especially setting it up. But yeah, it did the job. Now I'm going to pay special attention to the corners and also trying to get a nice smooth grind across the bevel and raise that burr so that I know I have something that's sharp. Beautiful, don't you think? Too bad you can barely see it. Next time I'll try to do something about the depth of field there. Notice the convex grind. Now I use the wet dry sandpaper method of sharpening. This is 150 grit. A little glue on a piece of marble and you're good to go. This is the way I learned it. Everybody has different ways of doing it. I find my blades to be nice and sharp and durable. Go through a lot of paper, so you trade off there. Everything's a trade-off. No solutions, just trade-offs. I use the figure of 8 method, like Paul Sellers exhibits, or shows, teaches. And I rock back and forth, and also, how do you describe it? Back and forth on the corners, and then back and forth on the heel to really grind out that convex bevel. And with the 600 that's behind you, the 600 grit paper, I started to try to flatten the back, and you can see it's quite a hollow. I'm not going to get that flat. This is as good as I could do after 1500, I believe. It's okay, but take a look at that bevel. That's beautiful. And I think I'm going to hit it with some 2500. And after the 2500, we'll polish it. Now this is something that I use my grinding wheel for, my sharpening wheel. I don't use it to sharpen anymore because, like I said, I've gone away from the concave grind. But it has this fabulous, I have the jet. It has this fabulous leather strop on a wheel. And boy howdy does it do the job. I put the torque at its strongest setting and push down really hard on it and use that polishing compound, some sort of oxide, I don't know. And boy does it polish right up. Take a look at this. You'll notice I put in a back bevel, just like Paul Sellers demonstrates. I've never done a back bevel before, but I know I want to hit that wood hard. We'll see how it comes out. Now I have to widen the mouth on this. You have to have a wide mouth in order for the chips to come through. You just don't want it that you have a narrow mouth so that the material gets stuck in there and you can't hog it out. So you make it wider. Now you have to file off the corner of your chip breaker or the cap iron, whatever you call it. You have to do that because you can't get close enough to the actual edge of the iron, and it'll protrude too far through the mouth, really too far even for a scrub plane. In this way, you can push the edge of the cap iron down closer to the edge of the iron, and it won't protrude too far, and it won't just dig into the material you're trying to remove. You might be a fan of Bob Ross, Happy Little Accidents, but in woodworking you know that a happy little accident like this will never work. Alright, so this is the culprit. This beautiful piece of wood. Let's take some quick measurements. I already showed you the problem, and I'll explain how that happened. This is 4 inches across by almost 3 inches, 2 3/4 inches tall. What I'm doing is I'm making a bedpost out of this. These were originally oaken beams that a friend of mine cut to make a boat. Well, he had a job assignment in Saskatchewan, Canada, which it doesn't have very much in the way of ocean or navigable water for giant sailboats that use these kinds of beams in them. So he gave them to me, and they've been sitting in my garage for 10 years, I think, now. And they had some weather and some dirt and grime get into the outside of the wood, causing a nice patina of dirt. And I thought it would be a good idea to use my table saw 10-inch blade to get through this and just take that outside layer off. But, you know, I couldn't get a jig to work right with it, and it was just constant trouble. And I'm terribly lazy to make a decent jig. So this is what happened. It's not the end of the world. In fact, I still need to hog this off anyway. It wouldn't have mattered. I was going to have to bring that down further, but I didn't want to bother with the spinning blade anymore. And I don't enjoy it. It was like, I don't like this. And so I made this Hawg here. And she's all ready. The Hawg. So let's see how it goes. This is my dogs here. Dogs and my hogs. And I already tried this out on a piece of pine, so I know that I was cutting, and look at that. Sweet. I think it's choked a little bit still. I could probably take a little more out of the mouth there, and it worked pretty good. I would say I'm going to make it even more aggressive and see how we do. Let's turn that down to more aggressive, huh? Oh yeah, man. I'm gonna make short work of this. So special thanks to Lynn Dowd of Dowd's Tools, Dowd's Antique and Vintage Tools down in Garland, Texas. I'm up here in Buffalo, working through a knot on oak, and I can't see it, but I just popped through it. And who else do I need to thank? Oh, Paul Sellers. I'll link that in the video below. It's fantastic, instructional. Look at that. Man, that's beautiful. It's smooth, too. Sweet. On how to do a scrub plane. So there you go. Thumbs. Blurry thumbs up. There we go. Thumbs up. That didn't look good. There you go. Enjoy. Have fun.